Hey, everybody. Thanks for your patience. How you guys doing? Thanks for joining today's TuneCore Live Session. If you've been tuning into these over the past year and a half, you might recognize me. For the rest of you, my name is Kevin Cornell. I'm TuneCore's event marketing manager. Today, we're going to be talking about music videos. More importantly, we're going to be talking about how independent artists can and should approach making their own music videos and how they can maximize their efforts in terms of promoting them. We all know that music videos become an integral piece of any artist's marketing plans. If you get a new single, a new EP, new album coming out, chances are you've thought about how or where visuals like a music video are going to fit into all of that. As artists, as fans of music yourselves, as artists, you've probably been inspired and excited by your favorite artists' music videos over the past, year plus of not being able to really get out there and produce much. I'm not going to show my age and wax poetic about the glory days of MTV and the impact music videos had on our culture before Jersey Shore showed up. But there's definitely an undeniable shift of importance around music videos, especially over the last 10 to 15 years. And this was no doubt spurred by platforms like YouTube and social media channels that we all use that make it easier to reach fans directly. So that, coupled with access to software, to equipment, to tech, it continues to offer creatives an opportunity to just express themselves using a different medium than sound recording or live performances. But when you think about what goes into making and promoting a music video as an independent artist, when you break down all the elements of pre-production, shooting, editing, promotion, it can no doubt feel like a massive undertaking. But fear not, I've got some awesome panelists today who are going to shed some light on all of this and hopefully put you in a better position when it comes to planning your next big visual adventure. I'm going to bring them all on right now, slowly but surely. Joining me today is TuneCore artist Melo Makes Music, who's been rocking with us since 2015, serving up all hip hop and pop greatness out of Chicago. Melo has a new EP coming out this year that you can look forward to. And of course, since we're talking about videos, we'll throw some links to his YouTube channel in the chat. Up next, joining me today is Alex Holder, my colleague and director of marketing for PIVTL Projects. That's TuneCore and our parent company Believe's US-based label services arm. And finally, not last but not least, is Mike Petrow, who's joining us as a cinematographer, director, and editor, who's worked on some amazing music videos. Mike is also a musician himself under the moniker Dunce Cap here in New York, and has a release later this year coming out on the fantastic Backwoods Studios imprint. So thank you all for joining me. I'm looking forward to tapping into all of your wonderful perspectives around music videos. I will kick things off with a question for Melo. Since we're talking about we're going to be talking to artists of all different career levels, all different genres. Tell us a bit about your first video shoot as an artist. What was, what sort of grand visions did you have? How did it turn out? What did you learn?
Oh man, thank you guys for having me for starters.
Of course.
Yeah, I think when starting out, the way that I approached kind of building like my visual world, man, I think the word that comes to mind before anything else is ambitious. I think that I was shooting for the stars, like pretty much right out of the gate.
Yeah.
I was super inspired by like Lovecraft and I think at the time Stranger Things was like huge. So I wanted to like build kind of like this supernatural kind of world, cinematic universe for like my music videos. And yeah, that's kind of what I aimed for. So I kind of started off with like very, very like lofty and like grand ideas.
Sure.
When it came to like the ways that I wanted to like plot out the videos and what I wanted it to look like. And I think for a while, we did pretty much execute on those visions, even with the resources that I had at the time.
I was kind of waiting for you to get to that point where you're like, well, I started out really ambitious but it sounds like you were able to actually pull off some of your vision and work with a team that kind of understood it. So that's cool.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure if you want me to get into it now about exactly how we did pull it off, but it's all about the team. And like I think you nailed it that way.
I mean, to me, if anything, with that, you don't have to get super specific, but I guess is like that's something that you learned right away in terms of like how to approach a video. Was that like kind of a lesson that hit you right away?
It's actually so crazy. At the time, and I think my first video was like 2015. But I'll kind of group this into like the first few videos I did, maybe like the first 3 or 4. I worked with different groups of people until like I kind of clicked with this one person. And it's super interesting because this person basically was buying a coffee for me at a cafe job that I had at the time. And he was like, "Yo, I'm a big fan." And for me, it was like at that time, like getting that sort of recognition was very rare and
Right.
kind of surprising. So I was like, "Oh, what? It's like you know my music." And he happened to be going to school. There's a school in Chicago called Tribeca, and it's a film school. My apologies. I thought I muted this, but he was pretty much like, "Yeah, I'm a big fan, and I want to kind of help you like bring like some ideas to life visually." And that partnership really kind of opened the door for like a visual aesthetic, and with my brand as well. Like it really kind of started things. So he kind of found me, which is insane. Mason Adams, shout out Mason Adams. We have since been separated via work and life and all these things. But yeah, Mason Adams is great. So he actually kind of found me, which is really funny.
I love that because I feel like it also just sort of speaks to the nature of creatives finding each other. And I think when you talk about music videos, a lot of people don't know where to start looking for people, and they don't, or maybe they feel uncomfortable asking people they know that are, creatives. And then you have someone who just that believes in your project and wants to do something with you. And those can sometimes end up being a match made in heaven. So that's really cool.
Absolutely.
I wanted to kick one over to Alex, just from a marketing standpoint, and that's how I'm going to be handling all these. Obviously, we have 2 artists, we have a marketer, but everyone has their hands in so much of this stuff. So, in the grand scheme of things in 2022, Alex, how would you rank the importance of music videos when it comes to an artist's marketing plan? Do you think anything has like changed in the landscape, recently, obviously given the pandemic, or do you think it's all about having content ready to go when you're getting ready to talk about your new music?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Excited to be here for this. But it's a great question. And I think that, a lot has changed during the pandemic, but I think that the main function of music videos remains the same. And that's to kind of deepen the fan experience and to also offer a visual piece of your narrative. I think building a narrative as an artist is extremely important. And I would never say that a campaign can't be successful without a music video, because I do believe that, audio can stand on its own with creative marketing involved, but music videos really can make your life easier in terms of giving your entire campaign a really strong visual vibe that kind of ties everything together, creates like a really cohesive, memorable rollout. And they also provide fodder for the ancillary assets that you might be looking for. So things like a Spotify canvas or, teaser clips for socials, IG ads, things like that. If you don't have a video and then you're all of a sudden like, what am I running as an ad? Or what am I posting to advertise this song? Like you can find that the tank is all of a sudden empty really quickly when you don't have a larger visual piece like that to pull from. So it certainly makes your life easier. I think it deepens the fan experience as well. And if you want to get a little bit further into, what a more comprehensive rollout might look like, which I know based on resources, it's not always the case, but if you do have PR on board, a video can give you more press opportunities as well, because a lot of outlets will run, exclusive premieres with visual content. So that does kind of open up that space if you have a video as well.
And I feel, and you said video premieres, and I think that's just like a cue for me to always think like over the years of doing anything related to music marketing, and whether it's pushing an artist, music yourself, or you're just sort of offering advice, we hear these sort of trends come and go. But at the end of the day, having like if you're pitching to certain outlets and they say, oh, well, we don't really do video premieres anymore, or like we're really hot on video premieres right now, it shouldn't really play an impact on whether or not you release a video, and it shouldn't be a reason to release a video either. But I had to comment on that because it always comes up, and there's always just these sort of, well, what are people doing this year? What do people want from me? And I think that's important. And I'm calling this part of the segment establishing your video vision. I kind of want to go in order of talking about the before, during, and after of all of this. So, Mike, I'm going to kick this one over to you. And this is, kind of interesting considering what we just heard from Melo, but when an artist approaches you about working with them on a new music video, what are some like kind of key things that you want to know about both their vision and their expectations?
Well, yeah, well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Great question. So when someone approaches me for a video, that happens kind of a lot. As someone who makes video, not a lot, but the point is,
Don't be humble.
I gotta be humble because it's true. But like, for every, let's say 5 people that reach out to you, 4 of them will not respond after that, right? So I guess what I look for immediately in an artist is, or what I ask them is like, do you have any ideas? I don't usually start with the budget question because that scares people away.
Sure.
And generally I'm pretty flexible with it. If I like the artist, I'll work with them for really cheap. If I don't, I'll charge them more money. And generally people are willing to pay more money sometimes, and you wouldn't think who. But in terms of expectations, I try to send them to my site. I say like, hey, like your video is going to look pretty much exactly like one of these, albeit you'll be in it and we'll shoot new stuff. That being said, like I'm happy to entertain any idea you have because I'm also looking to be inspired as like a video creator. Some people come to me with nothing. Some people want me to bring them ideas. Some people want to be collaborative. And I think I try to discern what process I'm going to go through in that initial conversation. So I try to figure like, hey, do you want to like come up with the idea with me? Do you want me to make the idea for you? Do you have a crazy movie idea? You want me to just like shoot a script? And I've had experiences with all these different types of, I guess, workflows or dynamics or whatever you would want to call it. And I think it's just like, it is very important to do that, to really know the rules and also like even the credits, like who's writing this, who's directing this, who's the cinematographer, and sometimes it's the artist who does the writing or editing even, it really depends. And that all affects pricing too.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny because like a lot of what you just touched on plays perfectly into a question I had from Melo, which is, we say it all the time, and it's, we say it ad nauseum, but it's true that artists these days are asked to be and do a lot of things on top of just creating music. So Melo, I guess not only in regard to what Mike just said, but in general, do you consider yourself an artist who can sort of naturally communicate things visually? Do you have any advice for those who might struggle with this? Because I know that's a problem for a lot of people. They might be really nice on the mic, but when it comes to sort of coming up with visual concepts, it's just not their strong suit.
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been super important that I kind of like fuel a lot of those ideas. Like I think in any collaboration, you kind of have to come to the table like knowing what the intention is and kind of knowing like, what that give and take is going to be between artists. There's definitely been times where I've had, my video team like implement ideas or run ideas by me, and I actually end up really liking those ideas and then wanting to include those things. But also I think I always kind of have a strong sense of what I want to go for going into anything. Like I was saying earlier in the beginning, it was like this really like supernatural element that I wanted to bring into these music videos. And I'm like a huge nerd. Like I grew up on like comic books and stuff like that. So for me, it was always really important to kind of incorporate some of those ideas. And there's a video that I did in 2017 with another TuneCore artist, Taylor Bennett, where the videographers there that I collaborated with, they really heard what I had to say in regards to the supernatural element and kind of, injecting in this kind of comic book vibe. And they really helped bring to life like one of the more accurate visions of mine that I kind of expressed to them that I've like ever experienced with a production crew. So it's cool. It's important, I think, as a musician or any artist that's trying to do something visually to kind of at least have some sort of vision. If that's like what you want. And if it's hard and if that part isn't necessarily like a natural thing, for you. I think working with somebody who really can like tap into your music and feel it in ways like that are similar, feel it in ways that evoke like similar passion, then I think you could still get a really cool visual aesthetic out of whatever artist you choose to work with behind the camera. I think it all depends on what you want. There have been times where I've been more relaxed about creative liberties and stuff like that with videographers, and there have been times where I'm like, no, like the tile in the background needs to be pink. Like if it's not pink, then it's not gonna work. Like, you know what I mean? So I think it really depends.
You're giving Mike PTSD. No, but I think you touched on a lot of things there that are super important. First of all, you called the person behind the camera an artist, which is what they are. And I think that's so important for any artist, any creative watching this right now, is to remember that, like, there's a reason why these pieces of art come together in a visual form. It's because you have creative people on both sides. And I think what Melo talks about in terms of how he works with different creatives in that end, it's important to remember, and it's important to sort of tap into it a little bit and not feel so nervous to trust or to guide, whatever that, whichever the scenario sort of calls for. So I think there's a lot of gold in there. Alex, as a marketer, what do you think artists should really be tapped into, I guess, when it comes to just elements or contents of a music video that could result in like restrictions by platforms or might end up having like negative impacts on campaigns? Because I think we live in a world right now where there's never been more opportunity to show off your videos and show off your visuals. But is there anything that should serve as a warning to folks who maybe don't know that going into their first video that like they should be aware of?
Yeah, I love that you're asking this question, because this is something that I've run into a lot, and that I think a lot of people just aren't as educated on as they should be. And the worst thing ever is spending all this money on a video that then you can't leverage in the way that you anticipated. So it's really important to read up on YouTube's content guidelines. They are stricter than you think. And they could result in limited monetization of your video. They could result in your ad campaign that you had planned for being flat out rejected. Things like guns, smoking, any kind of smoking, whether it's a cigarette or a blunt, like they don't really distinguish or care. Nudity, anything super sexual in nature. These things can all cause your ads to get rejected. They can cause your video to only be served to a restricted or limited audience based on, the risk factors that YouTube has identified, and that stifles your reach. So ad campaign or not, you want to be able to fully take advantage of your organic reach on the platform, because even without ads, if you've optimized your video properly in terms of the metadata and the tagging and the keywords and all that good stuff, your video can still take off on YouTube regardless of your budget. So you don't want to do anything that could damage that. Furthermore, if you have a budget planned, you don't want to not be able to run ads. So definitely read up on those types of restrictions. Now you're probably thinking, as I'm saying this, but wait, I've seen, fill in the blank A-list artists put out a super explicit video or put out a video with guns. Like, why are they allowed to do it? So if you have a direct line to YouTube, let's say you're working with a YouTube buyer who has a rep there, or, you've got a guy, right? Like, how many times have we heard that? Like, we've all got a guy somewhere. And if you have a guy, that's great. Just make sure that you speak about it beforehand, because they can grant exceptions for videos, which certainly happens for these bigger A-list artists all the time. If you have an ad budget, I think that kind of helps push that exception through. But, at the end of the day, you just need to be clear on the risks that you're taking by implementing certain things that are non-compliant in your video. So speak to that person before you even begin shooting and say, hey, this is what the treatment looks like. There's going to be a gun in this scene, or there's going to be a cigarette in this scene. Can you tell me with certainty that we can get this through, right? Because like I said, you don't want to spend all that money on the shoot and then find out that the video is basically null. So that's really important. Even if you're able to get it through onto YouTube and everything's kosher, platforms like TikTok and Instagram, all the social platforms, they also have guidelines. TikTok in particular has really strict content guidelines because of how young their average audience is and their user base. So just another thing to keep in mind, even if you get it onto YouTube, you need to make sure that the cut downs that you're using for ads are clean so that they don't get rejected by those platforms. You need to make sure, like that there's no explicit language. You need the clean version of the track, or you need to just cut out a section of the track that's clean from the explicit. So yeah, just, you don't want to pay to create assets or waste time creating assets that you can't use. So reading up on that stuff is important. Also remember that people can always report you. So even if you're not running ads and you're posting organically, I've had an artist run into an issue where his clips were getting reported. And that can cause you to get like shadow banned on the platform, and we don't want that. So I'm not saying that your video has to be rated G by any means, but just make sure that you understand the risks involved before you spend money.
Yeah, I hope everyone who was watching this was listening carefully to that, because it's true. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of things you have to take into consideration around this. Obviously, not everyone is, filming or shooting content that's going to be subject to this, but I think you might be really surprised at some of the restrictions. I think about the obviously now famous independent rapper producer LP in a video he tried to put out in like the early 2000s, where everyone in the video is holding a gun directly at him for the entire thing, and they said they put like 10 grand into it back in the day, which is, those are W dollars, so who knows? But the amount of, like how quickly that could have gotten shut down if you didn't have a contact at one of these platforms, it would have just been out the window. So these are super, super important.
And for added context, because that's a great point. Also, like I've even worked with a video where the artist was holding guns attached to an arcade game, and they're connected to the arcade game. You can see that they're fake, but the video still got rejected. So just remember that it's not even always a human reviewing these things. It could be AI flagging it. And there's nothing you could do. And B, just again, if you have that person who's like your connect, make sure that you discuss it beforehand and don't just assume like, oh, well, they're fake guns, so it'll be fine.
Yeah. Now I want to go play the Terminator arcade game back in the bowling alley in Clinton, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I wanted to actually piggyback on what Alex just said. Because I had actually, this is the perfect time to mention this, but I had a video that we were trying to run an ad campaign on, and I had a water gun in a scene. It was a water gun, very clearly a water gun. I have it right here, actually. Like,
don't do that, man.
This was being flagged by an AI and an algorithm, and was like basically kind of like making it so that my video wouldn't be allowed to have ads on it. And then I did have to ultimately reach out to somebody and get like some further assistance to kind of have like our human review the video. So that's absolutely correct. Like, a robot is the thing that is watching and reviewing your video first, like 9 times out of 10. So having an actual person to talk to is very, very helpful. And this is even after I Disneyfied the song, stripped all the swear words out, which is something that, like Alex also mentioned, a lot of A-list artists like don't really have to do, and you can skirt explicit content if you have some dollars behind the budget, and or you have like a contact at YouTube and or Google. The way that whole ad system works is it's pretty much like all automated now. So that's kind of why there's so many issues and hiccups, and why so many people have problems. So yeah, I think that's super crucial to mention for anybody out there who's like looking to get a video on like, a platform like YouTube and wanting to promote it. It's real. It's real. That water gun was in a scene for like 10 seconds. And I definitely ran into a similar issue.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that also like sort of speaks to a lot of things that we deal with here at TuneCore, which is like, we have this great platform. It democratizes music distribution for everyone. We love it. We're still subject to rules when it comes to things, and like menial, just tedious rules that just matter to our DSP partners. And people say, well, XYZ did it, Taylor Swift did it. It's like, I know, but they got a person on the inside, so a lot of that happens with formatting and stuff. Mike, I wanted to kick one to you. Just tapping into you being an artist yourself. How much does that play a role in how you work with others in this capacity? Do you feel that directors with a specialization in music videos have any different kind of obligations when it comes to working with independent creators?
In terms of like other, in terms of music video directors having like specific obligations, I guess maybe not really, but a little bit. I think one thing is being up on music videos. I think music videos are by nature, a marketing tool, just like, but also experimental filmmaking. A lot of music videos that you see, like, oh, there's like some new like something that's popular, right? Like it gets exploited in a music video, like an editing technique, or like a plugin that glitches your stuff, or like whatever's kind of popular, or a camera trick. Like there was those Kendrick videos when Damn came out, and there was like these robotic arms. Like that's hot. That's a hot look, and like that's a new technology too. So I mean, in terms of being like what a video director should know, I think that just like having your finger on the pulse of like the industry, whether it's music or video, can really help inform new things you want to try. Like I just released a music video that uses a lot of like glitch, and that's just like a plugin in like After Effects, right?
Sure.
So it's like that's something I've never done before. It looks cool. I'm excited about it, and I don't know, that's just something new. In terms of like working with artists themselves and like being one, I think it's just like learning to kind of catch the vibe off of people. I work with a lot of rappers, 99% rappers, and a lot of the times we're shooting on the street, and it can be awkward for some people because they're like performing, like just in front of random people walking by, and depending on the context of the song, they could look goofy, or like they're trying to act harder, or they're just being more emotionally vulnerable, whatever it is. It's like, I see there's a comment about the plugin, so I'm just going to say it's a plugin called Data Mosh. You could get it, just search Data Mosh plugin. But yeah, I think just like picking up on kind of performance based like nuances, and learning when someone might be uncomfortable, or even like I said, shooting on location on the street. It's like I do a lot of like indie kind of run and gun guerrilla type of videos, so it's not like everyone's mic'd up and there's not a whole crew. So I think just knowing that, hey, like you should probably project your voice a little more. Some people like just lip sync when they're performing, because again, it's like outside. And I think it's just knowing your audience, knowing who you're working with, knowing what makes them comfortable is a really good start, at least to having a good working relationship. And that's, I think, what I've learned as being an artist myself, is just kind of like, maybe we shouldn't do this, you seem uncomfortable.
Sure. So I kind of want to move into like the actual, like, the mechanics, if you will, of your video venture. And I'm going to stick with Mike just because he was talking about plugins. He was talking about sort of his style. And I think there's a lot to tap into there. But as a professional with gear, with software, with know-how, what can you offer to sort of dispel the idea that an artist needs loads of money or experience to create a compelling visual worthy of sharing on the feed?
You don't need any money, and obviously you need some money. You need to pay the people that are making this, and obviously if marketing and stuff comes into it. I don't have actually any camera gear anymore, because I got a camera years ago, and time moves and cameras get outdated.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm about to talk about money and how I spend it while trying to convince you don't need money to spend. But you can rent. There's plenty of websites like I forget the fancy word for it, but it's kind of like ride shares for Lyft and Uber. There's that for gear rental. So you could go like, hey, I want to rent like a Red camera. Sure, it's actually pretty expensive to do that, but like let's say you want to spend $500 on a camera like a Red, right? That's way more money than buying one, paying someone with it. As long as you don't break that camera, there's other very good cameras that over time just you could rent from randos on the internet, and there's like insurance involved, that there's deals and stuff. Basically, I'm trying to say is you can get perfect, or you could get really high end gear for very cheap. And it really is like how much you're willing to put in. Like, I guess when I say you, I mean me, right? So I'll have someone, I've done videos for friends for $100 that I shouldn't advertise that I've done that, you know? And I've done it for more than that. But I wouldn't honestly say they look any different, because just my aesthetic is for the most part performance based, and it's really heavy with editing. I think I get a real, I don't know, whatever. I'm a good editor. So like, I think there's a vibe, and as long as you have a simple idea, or it can be a simple idea, it doesn't have to be complex, and it could still look good and look professional. I think as long as you get a accurate, honest portrayal in a sense of who these artists are or what the song is about, it doesn't necessarily even have to look good. One thing that's been really inspirational to me is a couple of my friends, they have this whole mentality of like, I just need to get this thing out. Like, I have one friend who I've done a couple videos for, Quelle Chris.
Oh,
He's
they're the best.
super awesome, super nice guy. Very inspiring to me, because the way I've seen him make videos, like ones that I haven't shot, he's like, yeah, man, like I'm shooting this on this couplet, and like I just need to get it out, man. I'm making a puppet, like whatever it is. It's like, if you could get it done, lo-fi is a thing. Like, there's some videos that I assumed were like done in a lo-fi aesthetic, and they're like, nah, dude, I just suck, and people think it's lo-fi. And I've kind of embraced that a little bit. Like,
Sure.
I've gotten sloppier with some effects, knowing that people might think it's lo-fi, or maybe embracing the lo-fi aspect of it. We have iPhone. Well, I have an Android Life, but like, people have phones, camera phones. Those are better cameras than people were shooting on, like the layman 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Like, there is so much power that we have as creatives that we're taking for granted. And I would just say, like, I think the original question was something along like, what do I know? What do you need to know that you need lots of money? You don't need a lot of money. You just need passion about it. Like, think about like TikToks or Vines, or like whatever that has blown up. It's not because it looks like a Hollywood movie. It's because it's a great idea. It's because the editing's great. It's because the shot's cool. The idea's cool. And as long as you do that, I think you don't really need a ton of money. Obviously it helps. And the more money you have, things become easier. If anything, things become easier with money. They don't necessarily need to look better. I could pay someone to edit my video so I could have a day job. That's money, you know? And that goes into the budget. Hey, if I'm going to do a music video for you, I'm going to tack on some money for an editor. That way I don't have to do anything, right? And that's like a fast turnaround. It's more like luxuries when you're early, you know? Like, I'm not talking about like, you know, bigger budget things, but when you're working on no budget, it's really like favors. How much can you be comfortable with putting out? Yeah. Someone just asked with the good editing software. I use Premiere.
I think that's a very popular one. And so I had some obvious, like some budget slated questions, but I think you covered a lot there. I wanted to tap Alex on this one, because we know that, like, even after what Mike just said, just the idea, artists might avoid shooting a music video altogether if they don't feel like they have the budget to create something that's like epic, right? They don't want lo-fi. They want something super epic. But, in terms of what Mike just said, do you think it's worth seeking out lower budget concepts for a video? And do you think there's just other smaller scale promotional visuals that artists can focus on for a new release?
Yeah, I mean, I first of all would totally echo everything that was just said regarding kind of like, the lo-fi concept, or just even, something that looks lower budget. I think as long as you are intentional, that it works. And as long as it kind of plugs into the rest of your narrative, right? Like, if you're an artist who typically turns in super high quality, epic cinematic visuals, and then you like randomly have this one like iPhone video, okay, well, how does that play into your narrative? Like, what is the function that video is serving, rather than just having a video to have a video, right? And I think it's really about finding the right team at your price point, and the team that understands, how to turn a little into a lot and help you kind of, bring that vision to life. But I think that if, look, I've worked with artists who won't shoot a video if they feel like they can't do something super epic. That's very real. And I think that it's justified. Like, if that is how you feel based on your brand and the image that you've built for yourself, that's totally fine. I'm not telling that you shouldn't be that way. I think that's valid. But I think that people often overthink how easy it is to create something that looks really nice for like ads or TikTok or YouTube shorts, shorter form things as well. I recently had a pretty high profile artist turn in advertising assets for a song. There's a video coming, but they hadn't shot it yet. So in the meantime, they literally shot video of him sitting on a staircase with like sunlight beaming in behind him just at like a really cool angle during the right part of the day. And he's lip syncing the song, at like kind of like in a music video style. And they're great assets,
Yeah.
and I think as long as you are in them, like that's what your fans want to see. The assets that tend to perform best are the assets that feature you, the artist, in them. So if you're there lip syncing the song, it doesn't matter if you're like on your front stoop or in the park or wherever, like that is what the fans want to see. So I think you should not hold back from recording some of that shorter form stuff, even if you don't have a video to pull clips from, because it can go a long way. And, on YouTube, just because you don't have a video doesn't mean that you can't still maximize YouTube for that release. You have YouTube Shorts,
Sure.
which the company is like really, really prioritizing this year. You have YouTube Community. So they've given us multiple avenues now for this shorter form content. So there's no reason to just let that platform lie dormant if in fact you don't want to have a video.
Yeah, I think you dropped a lot of gems in there that people should, even just thinking about exactly what you just said, where this artist was sitting on a stoop and the light was hitting in. It's like, cool, you have something right there. This doesn't have anything to do with the video. It's something to put to work for you. And I wanted to kick it back to Melo because I feel like since we've started, I've kind of, we've gotten a little bit of like an idea of how you've come to work with a crew, come to work with your creative vision. But I wanted to get into a little bit of the nitty gritty, I guess. But when it comes to like actually, shooting your videos, Melo, have you evolved in terms of what you try to accomplish with a camera person and what you try to build with an editor and post? 'Cause I remember right out the gate, you were like, "Oh, I was super ambitious," right? Like, has that changed, or have you sort of leaned into anything? How have you evolved in that way?
I think naturally, like kind of just the way of life, evolution's always kind of like there. So I definitely think I've only gotten more ambitious. But to kind of like wrap it into what we were just talking about, I think it's super possible to accomplish a lot with a little. And like Mike said, it really is about passion. So like, you want to work with people who share some of that ambition for the project. And I think the best project in recent memory to bring up is I did this song called Manifesto, and I had this video come out. It's gonna be 2 years in May, which is insane. Time is flying. But yeah, that video was crazy. I won't disclose the budget, but I will talk about this really interesting story where I had an A&R from a label, keeping things fairly anonymous here, but they pretty much thought that we shot the video for like $50,000.
Yeah.
And they were under this impression that we spent a ton of money and that we spent a lot of money on marketing. And, in all honesty, like it wasn't that. It was a lot cheaper than that. So Mike is 1000% right. You can accomplish a lot. And you don't ever have to stifle the idea necessarily because you feel like you don't have the resources.
Sure.
I think you need to just like put it out there that this is what you want and like see what's possible, because like Mike said, there are all of these places where you can rent equipment. A lot of things, like something that really worked in my favor is I actually am no longer based in Chicago. I've been in LA the last 6 months, but
Oh, my bad. I've been
growing up, it's all good. We haven't caught up in a bit, but growing up in Chicago, like you meet a lot of people. Growing up anywhere in any city, you meet a lot of people, you make a lot of friends, especially on like an artistic journey. So for me, it was like, all right, let me pick up the phone and like, what favors can I call in? Like, we shot a scene in a convenience store, and I used to live across the street from this guy that I made friends with like years ago, and I was like, hey, like, can we use your store? Like, I was friends with this guy who owned a luxury car rental company, so he let me borrow a couple Chrome Teslas. Like, there's like all these things where like I'm calling in favors, and it's like, you know, normally these could potentially break the bank, or, you know, make or break a scene. But I think like for us, it was kind of important to just put things out on the table and see what was possible and what wasn't, because we kicked around a lot of ideas that were a little too lofty, or it was kind of like, I don't know if we could do this. But then a lot of things that seemed kind of impossible were very possible. Another scene comes to mind. We did a scene where I built a bedroom. Like, I built like this, like it was supposed to be like a kid's room, and the idea was that I was kind of like the avatar of like in a video game, like a Fortnite character or something. And on paper, it was like, this is gonna be really hard to do. I don't know, like, if we can do it. And we've been kicking it around. I kicked it around with the DP on the project, and even like everyone was kind of all hands on deck. Like, the lighting person kind of was really involved in that conversation too, because you can't underestimate how important lighting is to making some of these things like feel more alive and feel more believable. And the lighting person was very crucial in making this room feel real, because it wasn't really a room. It was a set that we had to build and dress and the whole nine. So, and we were actually able to make that happen somehow. So I feel like it's totally about kind of having all hands on deck and just kind of shooting things around and seeing what you can and you can't do. And I think even big studios and big production crews kind of follow the same kind of ideology, even if they have a big budget, like what's possible and what's like kind of less possible. And then to kind of tie it into what Alex was talking about promotional content. I think it's super important to have, you know, these little visual pieces for your Instagram and for TikTok. Short form content consumption is like, it is that, like, we're fully there now.
We have no attention span.
We have no attention span. And that's why you see, you know, YouTube shorts and Instagram reels. And, you know, it's funny. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine a few weeks ago about TikTok, and we were kind of talking about, this is a bit of an aside, but we were talking about how all these other platforms are kind of trying to like bite that shtick a little bit. And then we kind of both came to this realization that it's all kind of free promotion for TikTok, because people are just recycling the content from TikTok onto these other platforms, and that watermark is just there all the time. So they're getting all this free advertisement. I digress, but it's kind of ridiculous. I feel like short form content is super important, and even something I was doing back in 2015 that I think is funny, that's where my head was. And I have kind of seen things change, and I've kind of done this less in recent years, but it's something I've been thinking about doing again. Is I used to do commercials for new releases before I would shoot videos. So the person I would shoot the video with, we would just come up with like some really, in the beginning, they would be like kind of set in that same world as the video. So very supernatural and like kind of weird and murky. And it would just be like a interesting 15-second, like little, like kind of teaser, no song, just title. And I think even something I did earlier than that is I would just even tease the title. Like, I would asterisk out and then like slowly over time reveal letters. Like it's funny to think that's something you could do in 2015 with confidence. And nowadays, like, you could show people the release date blinking 5 times and people will ask 20 times in the comments when it's coming out.
Yeah.
So yeah, things are obviously a little bit different with how we consume things, but I think definitely having those pieces is very important when considering a release. And, you know, even if it is just a teaser, you know, I think something else that I think is cool is the term visualizer has really taken off in the last year or two, and it's a way to put a music video out and not call it a music video if you feel like I have like a bigger idea for the video,
Yeah.
but like I don't have like that like team or that resource right now. Well, it's like, okay, like you can do like a lo-fi video or lower budget visualizer and put it out still and like have it be like a piece of content that isn't necessarily like the what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not the main course, but it's
Sure.
like an appetizer. And something that I employed on this manifesto video is I dropped like multiple videos. Like I dropped a visualizer, I dropped a lyric video that was also a music video that was like this pandemic style, a lot like these four squares, like Brady Bunch, like a bunch of my friends just like popping in and like dancing to the song. And it was because we put this out in the pandemic, so we thought it'd be cute. And it was, and it ended up coming out really well. But like kind of like stretching the life out of your song with visual content is like just a really good way to just like keep attracting new listeners. And maybe stretching the life isn't the right phrase, but you look at like Lil Nas X, great example, like a bajillion remixes to a song, but also like the visual accompaniments are lengthy as well. You know, even having a bass boosted version of your music video playing on loop for 2 hours, like on YouTube, like, you know, these things like help like draw attention, like regardless of if it's the highest performing piece of content, like having the options out there really helps. You know, people have um AMVs, like anime collages and stuff, or you know, different cartoon collages with the record. Like literally there's like a list of ways that you could kind of like bring a visual accompaniment to a record without necessarily having to put your all into one really solid music video. Even using these other tactics to kind of build some steam and then gauge your audience if it's even worth the time and the energy to put in resources to shoot a bigger video. You can always kind of test the waters with like a visualizer or a lyric video or even a like 30-second piece of content on Instagram. Or for, I think IGTV is gone now, right? Now it's just reels. No more.
Yeah. And
No more
I
IG.
mean, you hit on it with testing the waters too. I think that's like a huge tip for anyone watching that. Like if these are newer terms for folks, like this is, you know, it's all stuff that you should be, if you're watching this and like you haven't done, oh, I see someone said nice cat. Yeah. I just had a little cameo from my girlfriend's cat that just popped up. Sorry guys. But these are all ideas that, you know, you can play around with and toy around with. We have the means to do that now, and it's not going to totally throw you off course if it's not something you want to do the next go around.
Right. Exactly.
And
It's not,
oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say like there's a little more flexibility when it comes to kind of putting out like, you know, different visual accompaniments to a song. I think there was a point that Alex made that I wanted to hit on really quickly, but it just kind of escaped my mind. Alex, you mentioned that, you know, narratively it just has to make sense. And I think that that's the one thing to consider is that, you know, you don't want to put out something really huge and then follow it up with something that's a little less spectacular without necessarily like padding that padding that release out. I do think that's something to keep in mind. And you know, once you start feeding your audience something of a certain quality, something of a certain caliber, you know, it's not like if you're gonna feed, if you offer me a really good slice of pizza and then you offer me like a less tasty slice of pizza, you got to make the less tasty slice of pizza make a little bit of sense.
I think you've been in LA too long if you're dealing with that problem.
Yeah, I have been in LA too long. The pizza sucks out here, but I don't know if that analogy makes sense. But like, yeah, I did want to touch on what Alex said because that is something really important to consider as well, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, we're pretty much full into the music video promotion aspect of the conversation. So I wanted to kick it to Alex And because, you know, a lot of what Melo was just talking about and Mike was talking about earlier, just like when you're working with a professional, you're getting that, or even if you're just doing it yourself and you're shaping that final product, you know, what kind of cuts, what kind of stills or other just like digital assets should they be thinking about? Should they be requesting, or should they have in mind to keep, you know, the promotion of the video running smoothly before, during, after?
Yeah, so I want to start by saying content capture is key. Like the more content you can capture, the better. Because if you find yourself scraping the bottom of the barrel, you know, that's when you start to worry and the assets aren't as tight. You know, you don't necessarily have everything that you need and you're scrambling to kind of chop up this music video, you know, into something that makes sense. So definitely make sure that you're capturing content on set. Like have somebody there with an iPhone capturing BTS footage. It doesn't need to be super high quality. It doesn't need to be 4K. You can use it on TikTok. You can use it in an ad campaign. I think Mike mentioned earlier, you know, this lo-fi type of content, which it's funny to even call an iPhone lo-fi, but this lower quality content, it performs really well because all the content on TikTok is iPhone shot. So when you see like a big corporate company advertising on TikTok with like a 4K video that looks like it was chopped out of a TV commercial, it looks super strange and it doesn't feel native to the platform. So you should always be capturing kind of like this, you know, side content, if you will. So when you're recording in the studio, like BTS from the studio, that's another thing where if you're not going to record a music video, BTS performs really well, you know, because your fans feel like they're kind of pulling back the curtain. So you know, prior to even talking about what assets you need, just make sure that a camera is always rolling, basically. When it comes to, you know, pulling assets from that video, vertical assets are very important. So keep that in mind in terms of the way that you're shooting the video, kind of how it can be chopped up. And noting the specs for each platform is kind of key here because you know, you've got Instagram stories that are 15 seconds. You've got Instagram reels that are a minute. You've got TikTok that's 3 minutes. So you don't want to, you know, grab a bunch of 3-minute verticals and then realize that you can't use them on IG, right? So understanding those specs, you know, YouTube Shorts is another one. Those are a minute max. So making sure that you're accounting for each platform that you want to hit in the way that you're chopping up those verticals. Also for the feed, if you can, you know, it's not the end of the world if you can't, but if you can, try to stay away from horizontal video on your IG feed. I see this a lot. Horizontal video actually takes up the least amount of space. Like when you're scrolling in your feed and you hit a horizontal post, it's like stretched. So when someone's scrolling, you know, it's almost like a banner, like you kind of just scroll right past it. So if you do either square, which is 1x1, or 4x5, which is like a little bit taller, the 4x5 takes up the most room in the feed when you're scrolling. It'll take up, you know, almost your entire phone screen. So 4x5 is kind of my ideal when we're talking about clips that are going to be in the feed. And this is organic and ads, by the way. Just making sure that you're capitalizing on that real estate, right? Because you want to be able to really grab people and stop the scroll. So that's just something to note. I feel like horizontal assets, it's not that you can't post them. They just tend to not really gain as much traction or engagement typically.
That's huge. I hope people were writing down some of those specs, but obviously all of this stuff.
It's all online. I promise. You can Google all of it.
And honestly, if this is your first time getting ready to release a video, guess what? You're going to do it the next time too. You're going to be Googling it 3 nights before. It's fine. I wanted to save some time for some Q&A. I know we have some questions in the comments, but I did want to get one final question out to Mike. And this is because this question is important to me because I think we're talking about a final product. And we're talking about music promotion, and video promotion. And I don't think it's very unlike the final product of an EP, of a single, of an album, and sort of the mental energy we put into sort of deciding if it's ready or not. So I have this question for you, Mike. It can feel like a precious thing, this final product, but does the preciousness of a music video and its pending success, like as it sort of revs up anxiety, what advice do you have to offer artists? As an artist yourself, as a visual artist yourself, as it pertains to just taking this piece of art to the masses, both in terms of strategy and managing expectations, because I think expectations are a big thing to talk about.
Patience. Patience is huge. Okay, so I have a project coming out. It releases next month. I've had 3 music videos done for it for maybe 2 years, and that's a long time, obviously pandemic, etc. But patience. I mean, sometimes you don't have the blessing of having an obtuse release schedule, and you need to hit certain, release times or delivery dates. But feeling like I actually do struggle with this whole like perfectionist preciousness of this music video. Is it done? Is it not done? And that can really make me procrastinate working on a video. I mean, advice aside from being patient is, sit with it a little bit, give it some space. At the end of the day, these are all I've kind of learned or had to teach myself that we are doing art, but what I had to teach myself is these are all coming and going. Like sure, it's going to live on the internet forever and ever, but when I release something, I'm like, okay, I'm so glad that's out of my system. What am I working on next? Right. And in that way, I think it's important to say you're doing it to do it. And once it's out, move on to the next one. I mean, it's like a combination of limiting your expectations. Like you're not going to win the music video Oscar because that's not a thing, right? Like there's just like, it's going to come out. It's going to be cool. The people who mess with you are going to mess with you. People who don't mess with you are not going to say anything bad about it. And like, obviously it should be good and you should spend your time and energy to make it, an accurate portrayal of your style and energy and music and fun to watch. But kind of leaning again before when I was saying like little lo-fi, it doesn't have to be, you can lo-fi your expectations a little bit.
How long you been sitting on that one? Come on, man.
Oh, it's written on my dry erase board as every day I wake up.
No, but I think that's all super valid, and I know it's advice we sort of offer artists. I think TuneCore, as we talk about different subjects, it all does sort of boil down to that, and stuff like patience and managing your expectations, and also letting go and embracing the beauty of releasing some art. I mean, that's the name of the game. I know I'm not a musician myself, so I don't want to sit here and pretend like I have all the answers, but it's just good to be able to tap into some folks who have a lot of firsthand experience with this stuff. So this has really, really been great.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I don't think it necessarily benefits you in the long run to hold on to stuff and not release it. But if you do have a plan and you're like, hey, I'm gonna try to get this released over there, and like that's in the works, then it might be okay to wait a little bit, to wait a couple years. But if you're just doing it for perfectionism's sake, I think you should just put it out.
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear a cat in the background, but I'm gonna have to open.
The cat agrees.
It's Leon. It's my girlfriend's cat. We have a special relationship. I'm gonna get some questions. I'm gonna let this thing into the kitchen real quick. Excuse me. All right, run free.
I thought it was a
live session, Joe. Anything can happen. Cool. Gonna just tap into a few questions here that we have in the comments. Doug Derryberry asked, what are the best or most common softwares that music makers can use to edit together multiple videos in sync with their song audio? This could be a question for anyone. Anyone want to take it?
Yeah. So multiple videos in sync with their song audio. I mean, pretty much any nonlinear editing workflow, which is fancy talk for Final Cut, Premiere, DaVinci does it. There's also free ones online. I don't know the name of them, but pretty much music to movie or video files is like a pretty basic thing. So it's really anyone you pick. They're all kind of equal in my mind.
Sure. Cool. I know we talked a lot about sort of having someone on the inside. This is a very broad question, and it's not an easy one to answer. But I want to highlight it because it's a very valid question. And if we're going to sit here and talk about this, we have to address it. Jade asked, is there any advice for the best way to create relationships with these people on the inside? So we were talking earlier about folks at YouTube, folks at Instagram and Facebook, if you can get something cleared. I would like to kick it to Alex, I think, because you have these relationships working in the music industry, but I know that the answer is not going to be that easy. And if Melo, if you have any experience with networking and any advice that, either of those would be great to hear from you.
Yeah, I would be really interested to hear Melo's take because I don't have, I'm not an artist myself. So
Yeah.
I've sort of always been given these connections, with each new job that you take within the industry. So rather than just having kind of like a plugged in rep that you're getting on day one of your job, if you're coming from an artist perspective, I really think that it's just about networking. Meeting as many people as you can within the industry. Everybody knows somebody who knows somebody, right? So it's really about just creating those conversations and relationships and keeping them going. And I know that sounds broad and probably like a lot of work, and that's because it is. But I wonder if Melo, if you've found any other tactics that have worked well for you.
Yeah, I think you definitely said it. I kind of used to do this thing in my head where like I literally feel like I'm putting on different hats, and the networking hat is definitely its own hat. And when it comes to relationships, that's the key word. Like, a contact in your phone is a contact in your phone, but somebody that you have an actual relationship with is somebody who's like willing to help when it counts. Somebody that you keep in contact with and you keep up with them. That's kind of how you want to like build the ideal person on the inside, so to speak. And I think that it's really about that. I think for me, like, it's kind of like really keeping my eyes on people who are reaching out on my journey, especially in the beginning, and kind of filtering what their intentions are, and kind of naturally fostering some relationships. I know something that I do is when people behind the scenes have been really helpful in certain releases and making certain things happen. I like to take the extra step in thanking them with, a gift. I've been known to send like Jenny's ice cream to some executives before in the past. And
I love that.
Like little things, but you want to make and it's like, these aren't necessary things at all, but I was definitely one of those teacher's pet kind of kids at one point in time. And I would always like kind of try to go above and beyond and make a good impression. And that's really what it's all about, is staying in people's minds in that good impression. Because at the end of the day, the industry, especially the music industry, a lot happens every day. Things move really fast. Artists are coming in and out of these offices and stuff like that all the time. So it's like about making that impression last, and also just forming like real relationships. I won't like say names, but I went out to have a meeting the other day, and it just turned into like a hangout. Like we were hanging out for like 3 hours. Like, not even. I think we got some lunch, but no drinks, just pure like hanging out, and it was great. And it feels like a friendship, you know what I mean? Because it is. So I feel like it's really like finding the people and then like building real relationships the way you would with any person you meet in life. Because I think a misconception for a lot of people with networking is that there has to be this transaction that occurs, because like ultimately you maybe want something out of it. I think removing the expectation of gaining anything is important, and staying genuine and forming a connection, because you can't really expect to gain something, just like that person shouldn't expect to gain something from you.
You should be pleasantly surprised if you do, right?
Exactly. Like, it should be like, a conversation. And just like Kevin, when you and I first talked, like we got on the phone and we just had a conversation, like a year ago or so.
Yeah,
And that's kind of how I like to do things. Like I like to just talk and kind of put things out there. See in certain situations when you're working with people as an artist, you always want to see like, okay, like what exactly is the intention of even starting a conversation? But then beyond that, you kind of just want to like keep that connection in a place where the possibilities are endless, as long as, you know, I'm in consideration, you know, vice versa. If I could partner up with TuneCore, for example, on something, you know, I 9 times out of 10 will do that, just because y'all have been helpful back when, you know, back in the Chris Mooney days, like, you know,
Chris
I
Mooney,
was,
shout out.
you know what I mean? So I feel like it's just important to just build real friendships, you know, and that's what it kind of boils down to, is like, it's a crew. It's at times I used to think of it in like a very kind of like sci-fi weird way, where like it's like, you know, you want to look at the crew deck of your spaceship and just see friends, you know, the people that have helped you accomplish a goal. And that's, I think, like the best kind of way to approach networking. And I know some people have like a Viper mentality about stuff like that, especially in cities like Los Angeles, where it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm opening doors and like I'm climbing socially, and you know, I'm not here to offer my opinion on that necessarily, but I do think that it's way more beneficial to like, you know, just have friendships, like pick up the phone, like see how people are doing, you know, and not necessarily a way where you're trying to gain something. I think it goes a long way.
So
Amazing.
true.
I think those are some really sound pieces of advice, and I think it's something everyone can kind of take away with. I know we kind of went off the rails in terms of music videos, but we were talking about relationships and all these things that can play into how you promote your videos. So that was great. I'm probably gonna have to wrap this up. I appreciate everyone joining us today, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Facebook. I want to give an extra special shout out, obviously, to Alex, to Mike, to Melo. You know, thank you so much for imparting your wisdom on our folks who tuned in. This is going to be made available on our YouTube channel after the fact. So if you joined late, or you had a cat that was clawing at the door and you had to leave in the middle of it, you can go back and watch it. We'll have it up soon. Just thank you everyone for joining. And if you have any advice to share in the comments around your personal experiences with videos, we'd love to see it. So thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great week.
Peace.
Bye.